The firelight flickered as he slowly approached. His blood-stained black cloak was tugged open with careless ease, the fabric sliding down to reveal the hard, burning lines of his body. His abs rose and fell in sharp relief, carrying a wild allure that struck straight into her gaze. She wanted to look away, yet his nearness locked her vision in place. He leaned down, and his low voice spilled against her ear. "If you want to look, then see clearly." His searing breath brushed her ear, scorching with unspoken intimacy. Her heartbeat spiraled out of control, her breathing in disarray. Reason told her this was the enemy, the cold-blooded killer of her father. And yet, at this provocative closeness, her body trembled uncontrollably. His smile was unreadable as his fingertips ghosted over her wrist, as though he could so easily trap her in his arms. Danger and desire entwined quietly in the narrow space between them. Welcome to the Lady Saga's epic romance world. This is the Enemy to Lovers series, which is totally different from the Normal Mate collection. Hope you guys like it. Now, let's get into the story. The air fractured with a brutal crunch of teeth meeting bone. Anna gagged, the coppery taste of blood, a vile film on her tongue. Her home, the familiar glade within Silverstream territory, had devolved into a swirling vortex of claw and fang. The Blackwood pack, a relentless avalanche of shadow and muscle, crashed against the silver tide of her own. Their bane, a guttural chorus of victory, drowned out the desperate yelps of her kin. Driven by primal fear, she retaliated with unrestrained ferocity, tearing at the encroaching ebony wolves. Each downed Blackwood offered only a fleeting respite from the inevitable. Defeat hung heavy in the air, a palpable shroud. Months of relentless raids had eroded their strength, leaving them vulnerable against the Blackwood's raw power. Her gaze frantically scanned the melee, searching for a familiar figure. Alpha Theron Silverstream, her father, whose roar once commanded the very forest, embodied their dwindling resistance. Then she saw him locked in a deadly ballet with a figure of terrifying elegance. Alpha Kalin Blackwood, his coat, the shade of a moonless night, framed eyes that burned with cold ambition. Anna surged through the chaos, desperate to intervene, only to be blindsided by a Blackwood larger than any she'd encountered. She slammed into the earth, winded. A searing pain shot through her shoulder as the wolf's fangs rayed her hide. Snarling, she twisted, managing to sink her teeth into his flank. With a pained howl, he recoiled, giving her the chance to scramble back to her feet. Ignoring the throbbing in her shoulder, she returned her attention to the central jewel. An unnatural stillness had settled around Kalin and her father, the other wolves instinctively clearing a space. They circled, two titans poised for the final blow. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. She had never witnessed such vulnerability in her father's stance. Therein, Kalin's voice, low rumble that carried across the den, sliced through the air. Surrender. This bloodshed serves no purpose. Her father straightened, his silver fur matted with crimson, his eyes blazing with defiance. Honora, you speak of honour, Blackwood. You who despoil our lands, pilfer our resources, and butcher our brethren. I secure my pack's survival, Kalin countered, his tone hardening. You have grown feeble, the Ur, her father bellowed, lunging at Kalin. The collision was a devastating explosion of muscle and fury. Anna watched, petrified as they ripped and clawed. Despite his age, her father fought with the savage desperation of a cornered animal, but Cain possessed a younger, stronger frame, coupled with a chilling, calculated brutality. Then the fatal moment. A shadow of hesitation flickered in her father's gaze, a spall-light second lapse that Kalin exploited with deadly precision, a swift, brutal attack to the throat. Anya gasped, a strangled sound ripped from her chest. Her father stumbled back, clutching his neck, blood pulsed between his fingers, turning his silver coat a sickening red. He looked at Anna, his eyes filled with a haunting mixture of pain and regret. Kalin stood over him, chest heaving, his own pelt bearing the marks of battle, but his eyes held a peculiar intensity, a flicker of something Anya couldn't comprehend. Fen Silverstream, Alpha of the Silverstream pack, the leader of decades, crumpled to the earth, his eyes glazed over, his body still. Anya screamed, a primal wail of anguish and fury that reverberated across the ravaged clearing. She hurled herself at Kalin, heedless of the danger, her grief overriding any semblance of reason. You, she shrieked, her voice raw with torment. You monster, I will end you. Kalin remained motionless, unblinking. He simply watched her approach, his expression inscrutable. As she closed the distance, two Blackwood wolves intercepted her, teeth bared in stark warning. She fought with a desperate, frantic energy. But weakened, wounded, and outnumbered, she was easily subdued. Forced to the ground, she thrashed against their hold, her gaze locked on Kalin. "Release me!" she screamed. "Release me, you craven!" Kalin approached slowly, his gaze unwavering. He noted beside her, radiating power and menace. "Silence," he commanded, his voice a low, commanding growl. "The conflict is concluded." "Concluded?" Anya spat, her voice dripping with venom. "It ends only when you are dead." Kalin ignored her outburst. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face. She flinched, bracing for a blow, but instead, his fingers gently brushed a stray lock of fur from her eyes. "You will accompany me," he stated, his voice softening, almost gentle. "You will be secure." "Secure?" Anya laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You murdered my father. You annihilated my pack. How can I ever be safe with you? Your pack is extinguished," Kalin said, his voice devoid of inflection. "And your father?" He charted his own course. "Course?" Anya cried. "He chose to defend his people. He chose to fight for what was rightfully his. He chose to resist." Kalin countered, his voice regaining its hard edge. "Now you will come willingly or by force. The choice rests with you." Anna stared at him, her eyes brimming with hate and despair. She knew resistance was pointless. A death wish. The Blackwood pack had triumphed. Her pack was shattered. Her father was gone. And she was at the mercy of the wolf who had robbed her of everything. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face. "Do as you wish," she whispered, her voice broken. Kalin nodded to his warriors. They released her, remaining close, their eyes vigilant. He extended a hand toward her. Anya recoiled, shrinking away from his touch. "Don't!" she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Don't touch me!" Kalin hesitated, then withdrew his hand. He rose, his gaze sweeping across the carnage. The Blackwood wolves were corralling the surviving Silverstream members, their expressions grim. The glade, once a sanctuary, was now a tableau of desolation. He turned back to Anya, his eyes filled with a perplexing blend of triumph and something else, something akin to regret. "Come," he said, his voice low. "There is nothing left for you here." Anna rose slowly, her legs shaky, her body numb. She glanced at the lifeless form of her father, lying still in the blood-soaked earth. A sob tore from her throat. She turned away, unable to endure the sight any longer. She followed Kalin into the heart of the Blackwood pack, a captive in enemy territory, her spiritary consumed by grief, rage, and an overwhelming sense of bereavement. The Silverstream's downfall was absolute, and Anna Silverstream, daughter of a fallen alpha, was utterly alone. Or so it seemed. As she turned to leave, Anna noticed Kalin fixedly staring back at her. The intensity of his gaze was unsettling as she wondered what he was thinking, her captor, her enemy, or something more. Time alone would reveal the truth. Prisoner of war, daughter of the pack, the very air changed as they breached the invisible threshold. A denser aroma of pine and lom wrapping around them, laced with a feral tang that spoke of untamed dominion. Blackwood shackled and flanked by two immense wolves. Anya felt the shift deep in her marrow, a vibration of power emanating from the very ground. Here, trees clawed at the sky, their trunks thick with age, their boughs reflecting the brutal strength of the pack they sheltered. Silverstream had been a realm of dancing light, rushing waters. This was a domain of lurking shadows and buried secrets. As the group descended into the territory's heart, a warren of structures etched into the mountainside. The Blackwood pack materialised. Wolves of every size and hue, suspicion hardening their gazes, encircled the returning party. A magnificent, intimidating display of muscle rippling beneath fur. Their silence was a stark warning. Anna met their stares head-on, refusing to betray prey. Her fear, though her pulse, thundered in her chest. She wouldn't offer them that satisfaction. Astride a colossal wolf whose obsidian coat seemed to swallow light. Kalin surveyed the tableau. His expression was an impassive mask, betraying nothing of his thoughts. He dismounted with a live grace that belied his bulk, and the huge wolf morphed into Torin, his second. Torin's gaze, like honed steel, swept over Anna, assessing, calculating. "Alpha," he rumbled, his voice laced with respect. "The pack is restless." Kalin gave a curt nod. "They will adapt. She is under my protection." The reassurance carried a sharp undercurrent, a clear dare to any who would question his authority or her audacity. They guided her toward a crudely fashioned building, undoubtedly a holding cell. The air inside was heavy with lupine musk, a primal, choking scent that roiled her stomach. Thick timbers banded with iron formed the walls. A lone barred aperture offered a stolen glimpse of the world outside, a world now beyond her reach. Her captors released her, and she cursed staggered, her limbs unsteady after the long trek. She caught herself against the rough wall, her palm rasping against splintered wood. Kalin observed her, eyes narrowed, yet offered no assistance. "You will be secure here," he stated, his voice flat. "Secure." Anya spat the word like poison. "I am your prisoner. You are under my protection." He repeated the words, "a bulwark." "There is a distinction, is there?" She raised her chin, meeting his gaze without flinching. "My father is dead. My pack scattered, my home gone. All because of you." A fleeting shadow regret perhaps crossed his features, vanishing so quickly she questioned its existence. "Your father chose his course, as did your pack. They chose to defend what was theirs," she snapped, her voice trembling with contained fury. "They chose loyalty, something you appear to know nothing about." Kalin's jaw clenched. "Do not pretend to understand me, Anya Silverstream. You know nothing of the burdens I bear." He turned to leave, his broad frame filling the doorway. "Food and water will be provided. No harm will come to you." And with that, he vanished, leaving Anna alone in the crushing silence of her confinement. She slid to the floor, bracing herself against the cold, clammy wall. Grief crashed over her, a suffocating wave threatening to drown her. Her father, her pack, her life, all stolen, all taken by him. Yet beneath the despair, a flicker ignited, a spock of defiance, a refusal to yield. She wouldn't let him witness her despair. She wouldn't let him break her. She would endure. She would find a way to avenge her father and reclaim her birthright. Hours blurred into a seamless stretch. The only sounds were the sigh of wind through the boughs and the distant lament of a lone wolf. Anna refused the sustenance offered, her stomach churning with a blend of fury and grief. Let them believe her weakened. Let them underestimate her resolve. As night descended, she heard approaching footsteps. Torrin stood at the bars, his expression somber. "You must eat, Anna Silverstream," he urged, his tone surprisingly gentle. "Swing yourself serves no purpose." "Why this concern?" she challenged, her voice raspy. "You are Blackwood. You are my enemy." "My allegiance belongs to my alpha," he stated, his gaze unwavering. "But that does not preclude compassion. Your father was a strong leader. His loss diminishes all wolves." Anna stared, taken aback by his words. "You respected him." "I did," Taryn conceded. "We were rivals, yet shared a common cause. The survival of our people." He paused, a note of solemnity in his voice. "Kalin acted as he deemed necessary." "Necessary?" Anya scoffed. "To butcher innocent wolves, to shatter a family. There are complexities you are unaware of." Torrin murmured, his voice low. "Kalin bears a heavy responsibility. He acts as he must to safeguard his own." "And what of my pack?" Anya pressed, her voice laced with accusation. "Who will safeguard them now?" Torrin's expression softened. "That rests with you, Anna Silverstream. You are Theron's daughter. You carry his strength within you." He slid a tray of food through the bars. "Eat, rest. You will require your strength for the trials ahead." Then he departed, leaving Anna alone with her swirling thoughts. Torrin's words echoed in her mind. "You are Theron's daughter." That was truth. She was Silverstream, and she would not be broken. She would find a path to survival, and she would make Kalin Blackwood answer for his crimes. Yet a tiny seed of doubt had taken root. Was Kalin truly a monster, or was he a far more complex figure, a leader weighed down by impossible choices? Only time would reveal the truth, but one thing remained certain. Her path would be fraught with peril, and she would need to tread carefully if she hoped to see the dawn. The unbreakable bond, the air in the Blackwood Pack Hall crackled, an invisible current tightening around Anna's throat like a frayed rope. The rough stone architecture, smelling of lull and distant fires, formed a vast chamber that amplified every nervous breath. Flickering torchlight contorted the Blackwood wolves' faces into grotesque masks as they awaited their alpha's decree. Anna, a solitary figure at the periphery, hugged herself against the chill, her borrowed garments a scarlet letter branding her a captive of war. When Kalin ascended the dais, the room hushed. He possessed a predator's grace, each movement a testament to contained power. His sable fur shimmered like polished obsidian as his gaze, sharp and unwavering, scanned the assembled pack. Anya's breath hitched, his voice, a low thrum that resonated deep within her chest, shattered the silence. "Blackwood," he announced, his tone devoid of all emotion. The Silverstream has fallen. Their territory is ours. Their resources now under our control. A ripple of reaction, a blend of triumph and unease spread through the proud ranks. Anna's hands clenched into fists, nails biting crescent into her skin. She met Kalin stare head-on, defiance blazing in her gaze. He spoke of strategy, of solidifying their dominion, of fortifying borders against neighbouring packs, painting a future ripped from her grasp, from her people. Sarafina, the pack's healer, stood poised near the front, her expression an unreadable mask. Her silver hair, laced with ebony beads, framed a face of keen intelligence. Anya had observed her interactions with Kalin, noting the subtle, proprietary touches, the lingering proximity, as Kalin outlined the redistribution of lands. His gaze swept the assembly, seemingly at random, until it snagged on Anya. The world narrowed, the murmuring crowd fading to background noise. An electric shock, unexpected and intense, jolted through her. A silent gasp escaped her. Kalin's countenance shifted. Surprise, then a flicker of recognition. His jaw hardened, tension radiating from him. The air vibrated with unseen forces, a palpable wave washing over Anna. It defied explanation, this overwhelming sense of connection. No. Something more fundamental, more instinctual. Around them the pack stirred, their whispers fading into stunned silence. Heads swiveled, eyes widened. They sensed it too, the undeniable magnetism, the unbreakable link forged in that moment. The scent of pine and storm, uniquely Kalin's, intensified, threatening to overwhelm her senses. Torin, positioned to Kalin's left, drew a sharp breath, his gaze ricocheting between his alpha and the Silverstream prisoner. His face reflected stunned disbelief. He understood the implications. They all did. A low growl, possessive and laced with barely suppressed fury, vibrated in Kalin's throat. He broke the connection, wrenching his gaze from Anna as if burned by the contact. His knuckles turned bone white as he gripped the day ice. "That is all," he declared, his voice strained, barely audible. Dismissed, the pack dissolved, the stunned hush giving way to frantic, hushed conversations. They averted their eyes from Anya, their faces a mixture of awe and trepidation. The implications of what they'd witnessed could shatter their world. Sarafina approached Kalin, extending a hand. "Kalin, are you well? You seem—" He recoiled from her touch, his eyes still fixed on the space Anna had occupied. "I am fine," he snapped, his tone rough. "Leave me!" Sarafina's eyes narrowed, a flash of anger quickly masked by a veil of concern. "Of course, Alpha, as you command." She cast a venomous glance toward Anya before gliding away, her movements fluid yet radiating suppressed rage. Anna remained rooted to the spot, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, her mind in chaos. What had just occurred? The bond. She had heard the old stories, the legends of destined mates, tales whispered to comfort the lonely. She had dismissed them as myth until now. She was bound to the wolf who murdered her father, annihilated her pack, her enemy. Torin approached her tentatively, his expression a study in pity and unease. "Anya," he murmured, "come with me. This isn't safe for you right now." She allowed him to guide her away, her limbs heavy, unresponsive. Resistance was futile. Words deserted her. She was too overwhelmed, too stunned. The bond. She was fated to her enemy. As they walked, Anna finally found her voice. A rasped whisper. "What does this signify?" Torin sighed, his shoulders slumping. "It changes everything, Anna. Everything." He halted before her cell, unlocking the door with a defeated sigh. "For better or worse." He left her alone in the suffocating darkness, the weight of his words a crushing burden. She crumpled to the floor, burying her face in her hands. Vengeance, devotion, these conflicting desires waged war within her, tearing at her very soul. How could she reconcile her burning need for retribution with the undeniable allure of the mate bond? Was it possible to simultaneously hate and love someone with such intensity? Anya gazed up at the barred window, the moon casting stark skeletal shadows across the stone floor, the unbreakable bond. She realized then that it wasn't just a connection. It was a prison. She was tethered to Kalin, whether she willed it or not, and that realization ignited a terror unlike any she had ever known. A forbidden truth, the reek of triumph, a cloying blend of evergreen and spilled blood clung to Anna like grave clothes. Kalin's presence, intense, now irrevocably imprinted on her, festered beneath, a constant, sickening reminder of her defeat. She curled up in a corner of what had been her father's sanctuary, the study now an echoing void save for a crude wooden chair and the anemic glow of a single candle. The Blackwood pack had offered no solace to their captive. Her fingers absently traced a dent in the wall, a legacy of one of her father's fiery disagreements with a neighbouring alpha. He had ruled with strength and fierce devotion to Silverstream. The echo of his booming laughter reverberated in her mind, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence. She could almost feel the phantom weight of his hand on her shoulder, his voice a warm balm guiding her path. Family above all, Anna always. Now family was a ghost. Pack a scattering of refugees, everything stolen by the wolf, whose scent now violated her senses. A primal claim she yearned to reject. A sob raw and guttural tore free. How could fate inflict such torment to chain her to the architect of her ruin, to compel her to crave the touch of the hand that wielded the fatal blow against her father? She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to banish the image of Kalin, the hungry intensity in his dark gaze during the announcement, the possessive angle of his head. His victory was palpable, his power undeniable, and the pull between them a tangible thing. The bond, a conflagration neither could ignore, had been laid bare before both packs. A glaring, unavoidable truth. Fragments of memory surfaced, her father's final stand. She hadn't been there to witness his last moments. She'd been commanding a defence on the eastern border, but the aftermath, the tales of Kalin's onslaught. The brutal efficiency with which he'd shattered Silverstream's lines, the personal challenge issued to her father. He fought with valour, a surviving warrior had whispered, grief choking his voice. But Kalin, he was a force of nature, unyielding. The word resonated, now describing not just Kalin's might, but the relentless tug of the bond itself. Was she fated to become another victim of his supremacy, another shattered remnant left in his wake? She pushed to her feet, pacing the confines of her prison like a trapped animal. Revenge. The word tasted like poison, a smouldering ember in her core. She could strategize, conspire, discover a method to retaliate against Kalin, to avenge her father and her pack. Difficult, hazardous, perhaps suicidal. But the prospect offered a spark of warmth in the encompassing darkness. But then the bond tugged, a subtle yet insistent vibration that resonated in her very bones. It whispered of might, of security, of kinship. It promised a connection so profound, so consuming, that it could drown the pain, the loss, the malice. Could she desecrate her father's memory by embracing this bond? Could she possibly forgive the unforgivable? Could she reconcile her obligation to her pack with the undeniable truth of her connection to their destroyer? She halted, breath hitching. This wasn't merely about her personal vendetta. The Silverstream survivors were dispersed, shattered, defenseless. If she could somehow leverage this bond, this curse to safeguard them, to guarantee their survival, would it be treachery or selflessness? Questions buffeted her mind, a maelstrom of doubt and despair. She sank back into the chair, burying her face in her hands, hopelessly snared between impossible choices. Later, under the moon's austere gaze, long shadows painting the room, a soft scratching at the door cut through the silence. She flinched, heart hammering. A guard? An inquisitor? Or Kalin? She rose gingerly, hand trembling as she grasped the makeshift dagger fashioned from a shard of broken glass, concealing it in the folds of her ragged dress. "Who is it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. A deep voice, Kalin's unmistakable timbre, rumbled beyond the door. "Anya, just her name!" Spoken with an odd blend of command and something indefinable. She inhaled deeply, attempting to quell her racing pulse. This was it, the reckoning. She could refuse him, defy him, risk his fury, or she could unlock the door and confront the wolf, who was both her nemesis and unfathomably her mate. With a final burst of defiance, she swung the door open. Kalin filled the frame, his imposing physique dominating the space. He was larger, more imposing than she remembered from the battlefield. The lingering scent of evergreen and gorse still clung to him, but beneath it she perceived an undercurrent, something uniquely his, a scent that both repelled and beckoned, a dangerous blend of threat and something akin to solace. His dark eyes, the source of her torment, locked onto hers, brimming with an intensity that stole her breath. He remained silent, motionless. He simply observed her, waited. She met his gaze, her own a tempest of fury, apprehension, and a reluctant, unwelcome curiosity. "What do you want?" she managed, her voice trembling slightly. Kalin broke the silence, his voice a low, resonant rumble that vibrated through her. "To talk?" Anya scoffed, a harsh sound in the stillness. "Talk after what you've wrought, after everything you've taken. I know this is difficult," he conceded, his expression unreadable, "but we need to find some understanding." "Understanding?" she echoed, incredulous. "There is nothing to understand. You annihilated my pack. You murdered my father. You are my enemy." Kalin's gaze hardened into obsidian. "I did what was necessary. Your father would have done the same." "Don't you dare utter his name!" Anya spat, clutching the hidden dagger. He advanced, his presence suffocating. "Anya," he said, his voice losing some of its harsh edge. "We are bound. Whether you accept it or not, we are connected. We need to find a way to coexist." Coexist. The word was ludicrous, a cruel just. Yet, as she searched his eyes, she glimpsed something beyond the ruthless warrior, a flicker of vulnerability. For the first time, it dawned on her that Kalin wasn't just her adversary, but a wolf burdened by his own responsibilities, his own history. He was a leader, a protector, a survivor, just as she was. And in that instant, a sliver of doubt found purchase in her heart. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was more to this tale than she perceived. Perhaps a dangerous truth lay concealed beneath the layers of hatred and revenge. A truth that could either shatter her or redeem her. Burden of the alpha, the lingering trace of Anna perfumed his study, a stubborn sprig of lavender amidst the deep, low-mating air of aged oak and worn leather. The room's usual essence. At the window stood Kalin, the taut lines of his shoulders visible even beneath his finely spun tunic. The Blackwood domain unfurled before him, a panorama of shadowed woods and silvered river under the waning moon, his by conquest. Yet the victory tasted like ash, poisoned by the irrefutable truth of the mating bond. "She's secure," Torin reported, his tone hushed and respectful, disrupting the stillness. He remained just inside the threshold, his normally buoyant mien shadowed by concern. "Guards are stationed as instructed. No aggressive actions thus far." A grunt was Kalin's sole response, his back still turned. Aggression isn't their way. She's Silverstream. Subtlety is their weapon. Like moon ghosts, flitting through the trees. "She grieves." "Alpha," a note of empathy coloured Torin's voice, a sentiment Kalin either didn't share or couldn't afford. "I overheard her. She called out for her sire." Kalin's jaw tightened. He recalled the silver-furred wolf, pride unbowed even as Kalin's fangs met his throat. The kill had been necessary, a calculated strike to shatter the Silverream's resolve. Anya, however, had been unforeseen, that wrenching, electrifying pull that had seized him the instant their eyes locked across the crimson-stained clearing. "Grief is a privilege," she forfeited, Kalin stated, his voice devoid of inflection. "She's a war captive, Torin, and potentially far more." Torin advanced further, his gaze steady. "The bond alters everything, Alpha, you understand. It possesses sanctity." Kalin finally pivoted, his eyes, usually the warm umber of fertile soil, now gleaming with a frigid amber light. Sanctity. The Silverstream harried our borders, plundered our stores, and challenged our sovereignty for generations. My father perished fighting their Alpha, and now you invoke sacred bonds. "But she's your destined mate, Kalin," Torin pressed, his voice unwavering. "Rejecting the bondi, it weakens you, diminishes the pack. Ancient laws dictate this. Kalin knew them intimately. A severed bond could, an alpha, leaving him exposed, a target for both internal challenges and external aggression. He had witnessed such a decline, the slow unravelling of an alpha who spurned his true mate. The pack withered, the territory shrank, and anarchy prevailed. "She also bears the blood of my nemesis," Kalin retorted, his voice a low growl, Silverstream to her core, nurtured on animosity and vengeance. "Where lies the trust? Can you truly dismiss it, Alpha?" Torin countered, his stare penetrating the bondi. "It's a connecting thread, a slender chance to knit together these warring factions to end decades of conflict, or a force capable of consuming us all." Kalin faced the window once more, his vision fixed on the distant horizon. He sensed Anna, a subtle vibration beneath his skin, a constant echo of her presence. He envisioned her confined to the guest chambers, a gilded cage, pacing like a hunted creature. He knew her strength, her resilience. He had glimpsed it in her eyes, the smouldering embers that persisted, even as she witnessed her father's demise. He had commanded his guards to observe her meticulously, to document her every action. He needed to decipher her, to anticipate her next move. Was she plotting retribution, seeking a gain in his armor, or was she perhaps as bewildered and frightened as he? He recalled her expression when the bond slammed into place, the shock, the incredule, the burgeoning horror. It mirrored his own. He had braced himself for fury, resistance, perhaps even a self-destructive assault. But he had seen something else, a fleeting recognition, a primeval awareness that transcended their long-standing feud. He had dismissed it then, attributing it to the chaos of the moment. But the memory lingered, a persistent whisper in the depths of his mind. He contemplated his pack, the warriors who had followed him into battle, the families who relied on him for protection. He had guided them to triumph, secured their future, but at what cost? And could he truly ensure their prosperity if he severed the bond? If he permitted his personal antipathy to imperil the pack's stability? "Leave me, Tauren," Kalin requested, his voice burdened. "I require solitude." Tauren inclined his head and withdrew, leaving Kalin alone with his inner turmoil. The moon ascended higher, painting elongated, grotesque shadows across the floor. Kalin closed his eyes, attempting to quell the clamour, the discord, the conflicting emotions threatening to engulf him. He saw Anna's features, her silver eyes blazing with defiance, her lips pressed into a resolute line. He saw her father, the Silverstream alpha, lifeless at his feet. He saw his own father felled by a Silverstream raiding party when Kalin was just a boy. He opened his eyes, his breath ragged. The weight of leadership pressed down on him, a crushing burden threatening to suffocate him. He was alpha, accountable for the welfare of his pack. He had to choose a decision that would define the destiny of his people. But how could he reconcile obligation with longing, vengeance with absolution? How could he place his trust in a woman sworn to despise him? A woman who was his adversary, his prisoner, his destined mate. He moved to the table, his hand hovering over the map, unfurled upon its surface. The Blackwood territory was delineated in thick strokes of ebony ink, the Silverstream territory in shimmering silver. Two distinct entities separated by a protracted and brutal history, but now a single invisible thread connected them, a bond that defied reason, a nexus that could either unify them or annihilate them. And Kalin, alpha of the Blackwood pack, was caught within, torn between the past and the future, between duty and his heart. He ran a hand through his hair, his fingers becoming ensnared in the thick strands. He felt Anna's presence, a faint yet unwavering pull, a reminder that she was there, waiting, observing. He realised he couldn't disregard her, couldn't feign ignorance of the bond's existence. He had to confront her, to comprehend her, to decide her fate. But as he stood there, isolated in his study, bathed in the moon's cold light, he couldn't shake the premonition that he was not in control, that he was being manipulated by forces beyond his comprehension, and that Anya, the Silverstream she-elf, was the key to unlocking the enigma. The following morning, Kalin found himself drawn to the training grounds. It was an unconscious drive, a yearning to feel the familiar heft of a sword in his grasp, the unwavering earth beneath his boots. The air possessed a sharp bite, the scent of pine and damp earth filling his lungs. He observed his warriors sparring, their movements flowing and precise, honed by years of practice. He saw their allegiance, their power, their steadfast faith in him, and he questioned whether that faith would endure should he embrace the bond. Should he usher a Silverstream into their midst, he spotted Anna standing at the edge of the training grounds, her arms folded, her expression unreadable. She was scrutinizing the warriors, her silver gaze narrowed, assessing their strengths and vulnerabilities. She looked dissonant, a silver shadow among the black, an unwelcome intrusion. He began walking towards her, his steps measured, his stare unwavering. He could feel the weight of his warriors' gazes upon him, watching, waiting. He knew their curiosity, their unease, perhaps even their resentment. He halted a few feet from Anya, his presence encroaching upon her space. She neither flinched nor retreated. She met his gaze head-on, her eyes icy and challenging. "What do you desire?" she inquired, her voice low and steady. He didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, scrutinizing her, attempting to decipher the emotions concealed behind her stoic exterior. He saw grief, anger, resentment, but he also saw something else, a spark of defiance, a refusal to be broken. "I wish to comprehend you," he stated finally, his voice gentle yet firm. "I seek to know your thoughts, your plans." Anna laughed, a rasping, mirthless sound. "You think you can understand me? You extinguished my father, decimated my pack. There is nothing to understand. There is the bond, Kalin countered, his gaze unwavering, a connection that transcends our animosity. Anna's expression hardened. The bond is a blight, a cruel jest orchestrated by the moon goddess. I desire no part of it. Can you honestly deny its existence? Anya Kalin challenged. The gilded cage granite-faced guards steered Anna down endless corridors, torches guttered, their light painting the tapestry-draped walls with illustrations of Blackwood dominance. A silent, boastful chronicle. Her stomach tightened, shoulders squared, eyes forward. She refused to yield to weakness. They halted before a formidable oak door, its surface a canvas of intricate carvings, a scarred brute of a guard. A jagged line severing his left eye unlocked it with a resonant groan. The barrier yielded. Your chamber, Silverstream, he intoned, his voice a flat drone, the accompanying sneer blatant. Anya crossed the threshold into extravagance. It was a world removed from the rustic simplicity of Silverstream. The room was anchored by a 4-poster bed, swathed in sumptuous velvet. In the hearth, a blaze crackled, large enough to consume a small animal. Deep-hued rugs silenced the stone floor. A writing desk sat poised beneath a window overlooking the training grounds, a vibrant tableau of Blackwood warriors locked in fierce practice. A gilded cage, indeed, the door feuted shut, sealing her isolation. Gingerly, Anna stepped onto the yielding rug. She brushed her fingers across the satiny surface of a mahogany table, the sensation foreign and unsettling. Every object here radiated affluence, authority, control. A calculated display, a persistent reminder of her captivity and Kalin's triumph. Drawn to the window, she watched the Blackwood warriors move with savage fluidity, each blow precise, lethal, perfected instruments, blindly loyal. How many, she wondered, had butchered her pack? A wave of nausea threatened. Digging her nails into her palms, she quelled the rising tide of grief and fury. Turning, Anna began a systematic survey of her gilded prison. She opened drawers overflowing with exquisite linens and elaborately stitched clothing. A vanity offered an array of unfamiliar perfumes and cosmetics, all utterly superfluous. She wasn't here to adorn herself. Survival was the goal. In a shattered corner, she found a small library, shelves lined with leather-bound volumes. Her pulse quickened. Always a fervent reader, she'd sought sanctuary and insight within the pages of stories. She traced the spines, seeking something familiar, a tether to her former self. She selected a book on herbal lore, tracing the delicate illustrations of medicinal plants. Perhaps this could serve a purpose. Even in confinement, knowledge held sway. Hours melted away as she studied the book, committing to memory the properties, applications, and hazards of various herbs. The fire whispered and popped, drawing elongated shadows across the chamber. The sheer luxury pressed upon her like a weight. She longed for the scent of pine and damp earth, the caress of the wind, the unbridled freedom of the forest. Surrounded by such finery, she felt profoundly alone. Lost in a sea of silk and gold. A rub echoed through the chamber, startling her. She snapped the book shut, heart hammering. "Who is it?" she managed, her voice a bare thread. Kalin came the deep, booming response. Anna's breath hitched. Kalin, a name seared into her memory, a constant echo of devastation. "Enter," she said, her voice betraying a slight tremor. The door swung open and Kalin filled the aperture. His presence was even more commanding than she recalled, his broad frame stretching the fabric of his tunic, his dark gaze sharp and penetrating. An innate authority radiated from him like heat. He entered, his eyes scanning the room, absorbing every detail before settling on her. "Are you comfortable?" he asked, his tone surprisingly subdued. Anya scoffed, a derisive sound. "Comfortable within my enemy's domain, surrounded by the spoils plundered from my people." His expression remained impassive. "This is not intended as a prison, Anya. It is a refuge." "Refuge?" She echoed the word laced with scorn. "You decimate my family, obliterate my home, and then extend me refuge. Do you truly believe me so easily beguiled?" "I do not anticipate your trust," he replied, his voice low, "but I hope in time you will comprehend my motivations." "Comprehend? You expect me to grasp your reasoning for murdering my father?" Anya advanced a step, her eyes blazing. "There exists no rationale, Kalin. You are a monster." His jaw tightened, yet he remained silent, his gaze unwavering. "Your father possessed strength," he stated finally, but lacked the capacity for compromise. His inflexibility sealed his demise. "And my pack?" Anya demanded. "Were they also too intractable? Did they warrant slaughter?" "Cashew occurred on both sides," Kalin said, his tone carefully modulated. "This conflict has raged for generations. It was time to bring it to a close. And you elected to conclude it by extinguishing the Silverstream line," Anya spat, her voice thick with venom. "I presented your father with terms," Kalin replied, his voice gaining an edge. "He refused. He embraced war. He elected his fate, and what avenue remained to me?" Anya challenged, closing the distance between them. "You left me with nothing. You deprived me of all I held dear." Kalin's eyes darkened like a storm gathering. "A choice remains to you now, Anya. You may opt to wallow in the past, to pursue vengeance, or you may choose to embrace what lies ahead. Our shared path." Anna recoiled as if struck physically. "Our shared path? You genuinely believe that feasible in the wake of such devastation?" "The bond cannot be denied," Kalin said, his voice softening, almost pleading. "We are destined, Anya. We may either resist it or accept its truth." "Accept it?" Anya laughed, a hollow sound devoid of mirth. "You anticipate my acceptance of being bound to the man who shattered my existence." "I ask you to entertain the possibility," Kalin pressed, his gaze intense, "to transcend the anguish and envision what could unfold." Anna stared intently, her heart a wild drum against her ribs. She glimpsed a flicker within his depths, a hint of vulnerability she'd not anticipated. Could it be possible? Could anything exist beyond the hatred, beyond retribution? "I require time," she whispered at last, her voice barely audible. "I require time to think," Kalin offered a measured nod. "I understand. I will grant you the time you seek." He paused, his gaze lingering upon her face. "However, do not tarry too long, Anna. Time is a luxury we can ill afford." With this, he turned and quit the chamber, leaving Anna once again alone. The fire crackled, the shadows performed their macabre dance, and the gilded cage felt more oppressive than before. His scent hung in the air, a potent cocktail of power and something elusive, something she struggled to name. She was snared, not merely within a luxurious prison, but in a web of fate, entwined with the very man who had obliterated her world. And she couldn't discern which prospect inspired greater dread. Whispers in the shadows. The reek of resin and soten leaves saturated the air as Anna skirted the Blackwood Territo's edge. Kalin's allowance was a restricted one, a gilded cage perhaps, but liberation of a sort. She feigned exploration, mapping the terrain, noting potential exits. In truth, she was eavesdropping, moving with feline grace honed by her Silverstream upbringing. Despite the ache in her soul, Anna caught fragments of conversation carried on the breeze. Near the training ring, a cluster of younger wolves spoke in low tones. "Did you see her?" a young vixen with a fox-coloured pelt queried. "At the alpha's side during supper, as if she belonged." "Belonged?" came a derisive snort. "She's Silverstream. They decimated our patrols for years. Kalin certainly acts as if she does." A third, more hesitant voice ventured. "He hasn't exactly refuted the rumours, has he?" Anya edged closer, her breath caught in her throat. Rumours, naturally. What else would occupy their minds? The last of the Silverstream dwelling within the Blackwood lair, treated like what? A cherished guest? A valuable hostage? A pampered trinket? "It's perverse," the russet wolf insisted. "He eviscerated her father. I witnessed it. A swift strike to the heart. How can he just disregard it?" The deeper voice returned. "Perhaps he hasn't. Perhaps he's plotting something. Kalin always has ulterior motives." Anna recoiled, the words like shards of ice piercing her skin. She recognized she was an outsider, an aberration, but overhearing it articulated with such frigidity deepened the chasm of isolation that consumed her. Later, drawing near the healing enclosure, she discerned Seraphina's voice, coated in a saccharine sweetness that instantly raised Anna's hackles. "Torin, my dear, are you certain the alpha is sound? He appears preoccupied lately." Not quite himself. Torin's grumbled response was indistinct, but Anna passed its meaning. "He's fine, Seraphina, just occupied with matters." Seraphina's brittle laughter echoed like shattering glass. "Occupied with matters, or occupied with her?" Anna paused behind a gnarled oak, her senses heightened. "Don't start, Seraphina," Torin warned, his tone hardening. "You know Kalin charts his own course." "Oh, I'm a lair," Seraphina purred. "But are they judicious courses, ushering a serpent into the fold? She's Silverstream, Torin. Blood will tell. What if she's merely biding her time?" "Kalin can control her," Torin asserted, with a conviction that rang hollow, even to Anya's ears. He knows precisely what he's doing. Does he now? Serafina's voice oozed skepticism. Or is he swayed by something more visceral? Anna's fists clenched, her nails biting into her palms. She yearned to confront Serafina, to demand clarification, but she restrained herself. This wasn't open warfare, it was a subtle game of manipulation, and she needed to grasp the rules before engaging. That evening, during the communal repast, the atmosphere crackled with unspoken animosity. Anna sat adjacent to Kalin, as she had each evening since her arrival. But tonight, the weight of the pack's gazes felt heavier, more condemnatory. She toyed with her meal, the roasted rabbit, suddenly devoid of flavour. Kalin beside her seemed detached, engrossed in a discussion with Torin about boundary patrols. Yet Anna sensed his awareness, a submerged current of energy that vibrated against her skin. Abruptly, a fledgling wolf, scarcely out of puphood, approached Kalin hesitantly. "Alpha," he stammered, I overheard that the patrols near the southern fringe are overextended. Should we reassign some warriors?" Kane nodded, his expression pensive. "A worthwhile suggestion. Torin, attend to it." The young wolf lingered, his eyes darting furtively toward Anya. "Alpha," he pressed, his voice barely audible. Are you certain? It's prudent to confide in her. She's Silverstream." A hush descended over the clearing, every eye fixed on Kalin, awaiting his reaction. Anya held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. Kalin's gaze flickered toward Anna, a fleeting, indecipherable expression in his eyes. Then he addressed the young wolf, his tone composed but resolute. "Allegiance is earned, not inherited. Anna is under my protection. Disrespect toward her is disrespect toward me." The young wolf flinched, his face paling. "Yes, Alpha. Forgive me, Alpha." He skewered away, vanishing into the throne. The tension in the clearing lingered, thick and suffocating. Anya met Kalin's gaze, seeking answers for some hint of understanding, but his eyes resembled polished stone, reflecting nothing back. Later, as they returned to his den, Anna shattered the silence. "They mistrust me," she stated, voicing the obvious. Kalin halted, pivoting to face her. The moonlight illuminated his features, accentuating the sharp planes of his face and the intensity of his gaze. "Trust is acquired," he reiterated, echoing his earlier pronouncement. "How am I supposed to earn their trust?" Anya countered, her voice tinged with exasperation. "When they perceive me as nothing more than the progeny of their adversary," Kalin closed the distance between them, his presence imposing, "by proving their assumptions wrong. How?" Anya challenged, tilting her chin upward to meet his eyes. "By betraying my own lineage?" Kalin's expression hardened, becoming flint-like. "By prioritizing your future above your past grievances?" His words hung in the night air, laden with significance. Anya discerned his unspoken request, his implied demand. He wanted her to relinquish her sorrow, her bitterness, her yearning for retribution. He wanted her to embrace a future with him within the Blackwood pack. But could she? Could she genuinely betray her father's memory? Could she bring herself to forgive the one who had extinguished her old life? As she peered into Kalin's dark eyes, she understood that any easy answer was impossible, and that the whispers lurking in the shadows would only intensify. A bridge of words, the air in Anya's chamber was thick with unspoken accusations, a palpable tension clinging to the bare stone. Sunlight, a lone blade, bisected the room, illuminating dancing dust motes and the stark simplicity that screamed imprisonment. This Spartan cell was a far cry from the opulent vibrancy of her father's halls. Kalin stood by the small table, his imposing presence shrinking the already meagre space. Silence had been his only weapon since entering, a heavy, suffocating blanket. A subtle shift brought the forest to her nostrils, the clean tang of pine overlaid by something feral, the scent of churned earth after a lightning strike, an aroma she simultaneously detested, and to her dismay, found, quote, compelling. "This isn't exactly your usual surroundings," he finally rumbled, the sound resonating in the confined space. His stormy eyes locked onto hers. Perched on the edge of the bed, Anna straightened her spine. "You obliterated everything familiar." The words, sharper than intended, dripped with bottled venom. He absorbed the blow without a flinch, offering no expected platitudes. Instead, a sigh burdened with a weight that mirrored her own escaped his lips. "There's a context you lack, Anya." "Then enlighten me," she challenged, her voice barely audible. "Why the slaughter of my pack? Why the death of my father?" Kalin closed the distance between them, halting just beyond arm's reach. His upturned palms offered a truce, a gesture strangely at odds with his alpha persona. Forgiveness is a bridge too far, I know, perhaps forever, but I need you to understand, or at least try. He settled into the chair across from the table, a deliberate, unhurried motion. He indicated the opposite seat. After a moment's hesitation, Anya rose and took it, her gaze unwavering. Before I was Alpha, he began, his gaze falling to his hands. I was simply a wolf, scrabbling for my place. My father, the ruled with an iron fist, might made right in his eyes, and he pursued territory expansion without conscience. I often balked at his methods, but duty and tradition held me fast. He paused, searching for the right words. A drought ravaged the land. Rivers turned to dust. Game disappeared. Starvation gnawed at our pack's belly. My father dispatched raiding parties into the Silverstream lands, claiming it was a necessity for survival. I argued, pleaded for alternative solutions, but he was deaf to reason. Anna's fists clenched in her lap, the phantom sting of memory sharp. She recalled the tales, the hushed whispers of Blackwood wolves encroaching, stealing their dwindling resources. One night, Kalin continued, his voice roughened, a raiding party returned, altered, corrupted. My father had unearthed something in the Silverstream lands, a darkness, an ancient power. He used it to amplify his warriors, granting them unnatural strength, speed, ruthlessness. Anya's breath hitched in her throat. The ancient magic that pulsed beneath the Silverstream lands was no mere whisper. Her father had been its guardian, keeping it veiled, untouched. Had Kalin's father violated that sacred trust? Had he poisoned it? I confronted him, Kalin said, his eyes finally meeting hers, reflecting a genuine anguish. I accused him of playing with forces beyond his comprehension, endangering the entire pack. He dismissed my concerns, blinded by the allure of power, the promise of conquest. He leaned forward, his voice a husky whisper. He commanded me to undergo the transformation, to be infused with this dark magic. Anna saw the internal battle raging in his eyes, the revulsion he clearly felt, and she prompted her voice thin. I refused, he said, his jaw tightening. I challenged him. Our laws dictate a challenge to the Alpha be settled in a duel to the death. The air vibrated with unspoken history. Anya knew the broad strokes of Kalin's ascension, the brutal fight that had culminated in patricide. But this narrative, this dark undercurrent of tainted magic and internal conflict, was new. I didn't want to kill him, Kalin confessed, regret lacing his tone. But he left me no choice. He had become a something else, a monster. I had to safeguard the pack, even at the cost of my own father's life. He sought her gaze, pleading for some semblance of understanding. The conflict with your pecker, it wasn't about territorial gain, Anya. It was about containment, extinguishing the source of that dark magic before it metastasized. Anya stared, her mind fighting to reconcile this new version of events with the ingrained narrative of hatred. Could this be true? Was there a depth to the story she had never fathomed? Or was it simply another layer of deception meticulously crafted to manipulate her to erode her resolve? And my father, she finally choked out, her voice trembling. Was his death also about stopping this magic? Kalin's face darkened. Your father was a formidable leader, an unmatched warrior. He fought with valor, but he was also shielding the source of the magic. He refused to relinquish it to allow its destruction. I was left with no alternative. No alternative? Anya echoed, her voice rising in pitch. Choice is never absent. You could have found another path. You could have shown mercy. You could have spared my pack. She surged to her feet, the chair screeching against the unforgiving stone. Don't cloak your deeds in tales of dark magic and lofty ideals. You murdered my father. You razed my home. You stole everything from me. And now you expect belief, forgiveness. Tears streamed down her face, scalding with rage. She yearned to strike, to claw, to rend him limb from limb, but she remained trapped, shackled by the mating bond, a captive within his dominion. Kalin mirrored her movement, his face a canvas of pain. He reached out, but she recoiled, flinching from his touch as though burned. I don't anticipate forgiveness, he said softly, his voice laced with supplication. I merely implore you to entertain the possibility that there is more to this saga than you perceive, that I am not the villain you believe me to be. His hand fell, defeated to his side. I know I can never erase the past, but I pledge to forge a better future for both our peoples. He turned, his shoulders weighed down with the burden of his confession, and walked towards the exit. He paused at the threshold, casting one last look her way. Reflect on what I've shared, Anya, and if, despite everything, Hatred remains, I will accept it, but at least know the truth. He departed, leaving Anna alone in the oppressive silence of her chamber, her mind a tempest of conflicting emotions. The truth, such an elusive, intangible thing. Could she ever grasp it, disentangled from the web of bloodshed and betrayal? A tentative bridge of words had been extended, but would it bear the weight of their interwoven history, or would it shatter, plunging them both into the abyss? The alphas, just as Kalin's gilded cage, once a stark reminder of her captivity, now felt muted. Perhaps Anna was acclimating to its extravagance, or simply succumbing to a weary resignation. The heavy drapes remained fastened, barring the nent morning light from the arched windows. Perched on the sumptuous, fur-laden bed, she inhaled the room's peculiar aroma. Pine needles mingled with Kalin's distinctive scent, an earthy, almost feral musk. Yesterday's disclosures, Kalin's carefully curated version, fermented in her thoughts like a bitter brew. Dark arts, Reichside. A desperate gambit to safeguard his pack. Such tales belong to fanciful folklore, whispered around crackling bonfires, not as justification for cold-blooded butchery, yet she struggled to entirely discount the sincerity that flickered within his gaze. A claw from beyond the chamber's threshold snapped her from her reverie. Strident voices, laced with animosity, reverberated through the stone edifice. Anna stood, her bare feet patting softly against the deep pile rug, and approached the massive oak door, ear pressed to the cool wood. She strained to decipher the quarrel. He pilfered from the communal stores. Been stashing meat. Alpha, we witnessed it. A shrill, frantic voice accused. A deeper voice, brimming with defiance, shot back. I required it. My litter is feeble, scarcely weaned. They necessitate the supplement. The dispute intensified, punctuated by guttural growls and impassioned pleas. Then a novel timbre, one that sent an involuntary shiver tracing down Anna's spine, cleaved through the uproar. Enough. Kalin's command, amplified with alpha authority, silenced the discord immediately. Escort them both to the training grounds at once. Anya recoiled from the door, heart hammering against her ribs. Instinct told her that whatever dispensation Kalin decreed would be swift and irrevocable. A morbid inquisitiveness, a desire to fathom the man who held her captive and laid claim to her as his mate, compelled her to follow. She slipped from the chamber unseen, the weighty door swinging shut behind her, with barely a whisper. The Blackwood pack house corridors teemed with motion, wolves of all ages scurrying about their tasks. Anna clung to the periphery, her silver pelt a sharp contrast against the muted browns and blacks of the Blackwood wolves.